Hey guys, we're back with another edition of the Best of Three podcast. On today's episode, Torrey and I are joined by Peter Lebedevs to discuss the business side of tennis tournaments. Peter is the tournament director for the upcoming ATP Dallas 500 event, as well as the head of tennis operations for GF Sports and Entertainment. He was also the tournament director for previous GF ATP events, such as the Atlanta Open, New York Open, and Memphis Open. Without further delay, let's get to it. Eventually we'll get some sponsors and some ads here, and we'll just start, those mid rolls and pre rolls. That's where the money is. That's the good stuff. So Peter, you mentioned obviously it's about mid-January right now when we're recording this, and that means Dallas Open is starting about 2 weeks out right now, right?
Right, February 1st through 9th. So we've got about 15 days.
Okay. All right. What is as tournament director, what is your, as you start getting into the 2 week window, what do your responsibilities look like? What are the things that you've got your eye on right now?
Right now we've got the player field, so that side of it's pretty well covered. It's making sure that we're prepared for when the players arrive. On a new venue that we're going to, Ford Center of the Star is great, but we've never done it. And we actually haven't even started building the courts or even the VIP seating structure. We don't get to build that until January 22nd.
Oh, wow.
So
what's the site normally, Peter?
It's a football field. It's the indoor practice field for the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, that's right. You guys are there at the practice, then Frisco. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And then during football season, it's high school football. It's a 12,000 seat arena, and I went to a state championship the other day, and it was packed. 12,000 people watching high school football. Right. To be clear, that's Texas.
That's Frisco at its finest, right there.
Absolutely, Texas. And it was fantastic. It was great crowds, a great game, all that sort of stuff. So for us, we're bringing in a crew from arenas that is going to be building our stadium, and they're going to be working for 10 days straight, 2 12-hour shifts a day. So they're going 24 hours straight. And it's so, what are my eyes on? Making sure that when they come in, they're ready to come in. Everything is set up for them. Getting my staff in line to make sure that they're ready for all of the other aspects. And that goes from, the little things of picking up the players from the airport, and then making sure that in a new venue, all of this, Alvin, is because it's a new venue. It's not like we did last year. There is no last year. And we have a lot of people saying, well, can you send me a picture of what it looks like? Right now, all I can send you is a picture of a football field. So it's those are the things the eyes are on, is the little details right now to make sure we start off and put our best foot forward on that. And also, look, the other part about it from the business side is making sure we control the expenses, because at this stage, everything is, hey, I need a little bit more to do that. I need a little bit more to do that. As we call it, the creep on the expenses.
Right.
Yep.
The creep. And it's all needed, especially as a first year event. Because we've got to make sure that we do it right. But at the same time, there comes a time when, as I told my team on our Tuesday call, okay, from now on, you gotta check with me on anything we do. And I'm sorry already that I'm going to say no a lot more often than I have before. So it's just those are the things we're looking at.
Yeah, and so moving from SMU over to the Ford Center, going from a 250 to a 500. Besides the operational, aspects of having this being a first time at this, facility, what are some of the other things that maybe you're excited about that you're going to get a chance to do that you couldn't do previously?
Well, look, we go from a 2,000 seat arena to a 6,000 seat arena, so we can do a lot more with groups and bring more people in to see and experience the tennis, which is, always, tennis is my heart. So having more people see, watch, become fans of tennis, that's always good. We're actually also putting a giant tent in front of the Ford Center, which is our fan zone, and that's going to be open to the public. So you don't have to have a ticket. So again, encouraging people. That's something really new that we've never done before. And I say, oh, wow. I want to love to see how that turns out for us. We're going to have a lot of tournament activations, those groups that are coming through, and the wine partners that we have, and some of the other partners are going to be in there, as well as the fast serve contest. So Torrey, we can get out there and see if you can still hit it at 140.
Used to, not anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Let's see. So that's one of the things that's really new for us that we're able to do. and also the level of production we have. The back walls are nearly 7 feet high, so the ability to make a real great show out there is fantastic. And on top of all of that, partnering with the Dallas Cowboys is just we're very fortunate to be able to do that, and what they're providing for the facility. And on Tuesday night, the Dallas Cowboys are going to do a performance during the tournament, and they're going to have a tunnel as the players walk out. And if you haven't seen the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders in person, it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. So those are some new and different things, and yet we're still going to be giving a wild card to an SMU player. Travis Farger is getting a wild card because we still, as a company, GF Sports and Entertainment, Gary Furman has always wanted to promote and help college tennis. Right. And so when we run our events in Memphis, New York, and Atlanta, we've always done something for the college players. And obviously, a great story in Atlanta has been Chris Eubanks. The year he got the wild card and got to the quarterfinals, and had a great run. That's one of those things that we're proud of. So we've maintained some of those things as we grow to the new venue and new area.
That's awesome.
Gotcha. So you mentioned this will be the first year with the fan zone, right? So I'm kind of curious with your background and your involvement in pro tournaments from Memphis to New York to Atlanta to Dallas. From your perspective, how has that fan experience changed or evolved over those 4 events over the years?
Well, look, it's always as my good friend Eddie Gonzalez, who's being inducted into the Southern Hall of Fame,
well deserved
this weekend. He's going to always trying to create a fan zone, and the challenge has always been if you've got enough space to do it. And Atlanta, when we were building on our parking lot, we did a pretty good job. We did a decent job in New York with limited space, and we're doing a great job here because we have more space. So that it's really comes down to that. If you have the room to do it, you can always fill it up and have the fans having a great time, having the jumbotrons everywhere and that sort of stuff. So we're really excited about it. This is the biggest fan zone we're going to have, where it's 100% about the fans. We'll still have the stage where we're going to do the daily talks and those sorts of things. Those basics are still there, but we're excited about what this is because, look, people, they love tennis, but they want to be entertained. And just tennis alone, it doesn't matter what sport it is. If we look at any of the sports, they're always trying to do more things now. We look at
All-Star Weekend with basketball. And
exactly,
it's a whole weekend now. I mean, you got the slam dunk, the dunk contest. You got celebrities playing there. You've got, you got the game. In fact, the game has actually tanked over the last, year or two. But the fan experience into that weekend has actually risen. To your point, due to that, what's the word I'm looking for? That interactivity. Give me a word.
FOMO, fear of missing out. Got to be there. Got to, that part of it is what everybody wants. And what else is amazing is, and this is really since COVID for all the tournaments, a lot more people want to go out and spend some money on a good time.
Yeah.
So for us, the thing that's really going to be changing for us in a big way is we have our box seats. So, like you see tournaments, 4-seat boxes, and we're including food and beverage with them. And so they're going to be having such a great experience. And when you buy your box, you got your front row ticket, you got your food and your drink all day, and it's literally under your seat. So you don't even have to walk more than like 10 steps. So the fans are really looking for that VIP type of experience. And so we've got a really nice variety of different things. We have our boxes, we have our loge seats, we have our sideline club, and we also have our 40 Love Club, which is way up high, but it's a very private area, which we're really, Sub-Zero Wolf is doing a great job with that one. And where all of our box holders are eating out there, it's our Choctaw Club. So there's a little bit of fun with some tables in there. And again, it's all about making the fans have a good time. So that's inside, and then we've got the fan zone outside. So as a business, tennis has to do that, has to create those fan zones and those things that drive interest. And it's also what sponsors want. Sponsors want to be able to bring in lots of people that not only they are sitting in the stands and entertaining, but they're able to bring things in as well. They like to showcase their products and their things, and those kind of fan zones really allow them to do that as well. Or those VIP areas, like I say, with our Choctaw Club, they're going to be in there and, this is what it's like. So, all of those things go together to weave hopefully a fantastic week of tennis and fun for everybody.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question
go
before
ahead.
you go on. you've ran several years of tournaments, Peter. You've seen some good ones as well at the bigger stage. What, two-part question, what Grand Slam 1000 is if you look at it as such, your model experience, right? One that you look at, you mentioned Rotterdam, right? And has this, that, and the third, which is again, that's almost a rival league in a sense for you,
It
right?
is.
So that might be a tough one, right? That's the first question. What is that model? If it is Rotterdam, great. And you spoke for some of it, but maybe a bigger one. What are you, because I keep thinking that, you're trying to become a smaller, this or that, right? And then the second question, maybe a little bit more open-ended. What sport does tennis need to continue to emulate with its fan experience, with its, with the format so different, right? But, will we ever, soccer's teaming right now, right? On some stuff as far as the leagues and you got your country league, you got Champions League and so on. What sport are we best to emulate to really help propel our sport the next 10, 20 years, especially with, in my opinion, the upsurge of newer players and the absence of players that you all kind of knew about? In my opinion, at some point, you got to revisit the model and ask, is the model need to be changed up? What are your thoughts?
Look, every tournament is so unique. To say one is there are parts of every tournament that you want to have. So I would say, like, for instance, Indian Wells. You go out to Indian Wells and where the players hang out there and on that big grass turf area out there, and then the fans get to sit there and watch them. I want to take that from that event. I want to take we're talking about Rotterdam, the player experience for their food and their lounge and what they were doing. I want to take that piece from it. It's a case of taking those things in Miami, their activation area down there with the giant, the activations, their triple story deck with one of their, I think it was a tequila partner, it's terrific. So I don't know if there's any one thing. What I've done with our team is we've started traveling with our VP of marketing, Justine Pletnick, and really, because she's not from tennis, she comes from Philadelphia, working at Spectrum, where she was over multiple sports. So she comes with a different lens, which is great,
Right?
Because that's what we need.
Actually, yeah,
exactly. Because I'm an old man. I think one way, and it's black and white, and you got to dot your I and cross your T. And she's like, well, we can make the T bend a little bit, can't we, Peter? And that's what we need.
Right.
And it's interesting you talk about sports that we could emulate. I don't know if there's, again, one thing, I'm sort of hedging my bet here a little bit, but one sport that I look at, and it's not well known in the US, is cricket. And cricket was probably more traditional than tennis. They'd have a 5-day game, what they call a test match.
Those tests,
and after 5 days, it could end in a draw. What sport do you play for 5 days, end in a draw? And here's what came out of it. They ended up trying to, how do we make it more fun? Well, number one, you got to shorten the length of it. So they came up with this program called One Day Internationals, and they put names on the back of players. They put them in colored uniforms. They did it at night, which had never been done before. And the traditionalists, oh, this is terrible. Well, guess what? That was a home run. And so then said, let's take it one more level. Let's make it a 2020. And so now you can do it in 3 hours. And I went to a 2020 game back home in Australia a couple of years ago, packed, because you got 3 hours, it's activity, you've got all the things. So we need to look at our sport and make sure that we can control the sort of the atmosphere of it and the timing of it. Because look, the Grand Slams with their 3 out of 5 sets are fantastic. You don't want to touch that. That's traditional. But I think we need to look at it, and the doubles has done it, the no ad and the tiebreakers for the third, because we want to get into a format that people can absorb and enjoy enough of. So I think we need to look at that. I don't have the answers, but I do think we need to look at it because, look, let's be very clear. When football plays and it's kickoff at 12:01, that boot is in the ball at 12:01. Tennis, walk on as it's 12:01, but then they got to change their shoes and then they got to do their water and that. So TV doesn't know when you go on. TV could be anywhere from 12:07 to 12:20. And TV, every minute is accounted for in it. And that's, so we've got to become more
TV friendly.
Broadcast friendly. We've got to, those are the things we've got to keep working on for us to do. And look, I can tell you that there are things being worked on by the ATP, WTA, and all the slams. They're trying to work on some things. So I think over the next few years, you're going to see, as a sport, all of the leaders are getting together and trying to make things happen. So I'm encouraged by what we're trying to do. It doesn't happen overnight. That's the, like anything in life, it doesn't really happen overnight. So, but we as a company, by upgrading to that 500, we believe in the product. We believe in in creating that more a product, raising the value of the product and giving the opportunities for people to see the best players and keep doing that more. So, we believe in it, and we think it's going to happen.
What is the process? You mentioned, the recent upgrade to the 500. So what is the process of, obviously, Dallas to run, our beloved Atlanta Open had to die.
That's a hard word. That's a hard word.
we all feel a way about it, but what was that process going from a 250 to a 500? What does that look like?
Well, as the ATP is trying to increase the premium products out there in terms of tournaments, so they said, all right, we want to take some 250s off the schedule and create 2 500s. One can be in February and one can be in April. But there were some requirements, and you had to own 2 tennis tournaments already, or operate, or whatever different word you had. So we said, okay, we will put our bid in, and we partnered with the Cowboys to put a bid in. This is nearly 2.5 years ago. Oh, wow. Well, there were 17 bids for those 2 spots.
Oh, wow.
So there's no chance we were going to, I shouldn't say no chance. There was no expectations that we were going to get it. There was some, as you can imagine, some amazing bids from around the world. The one in April had to be in Europe. The one in February could be in any part of the world. So in the end, there was lots of back and forth, the ATP with the board, the players board and the tournament council, and trying to come together. And in the end, there were so many great bids. They gave 2 500s in February, and then they gave 1 in April. So we were lucky enough to be one of the 3 out of the 17. But to do that, they had to take off the 250s. And so Newport went away as well.
Right.
You're going to see it, not this year, but I think it's in 2026. The way the calendar works as well, there's not enough weeks. There's not enough weeks now between, like, I think in 2026 it goes Wimbledon, DC, Canada, Cincy. Like, there would have been a year that Newport and Atlanta potentially would have had to been on the same week, and there'd be 1 year because there'd be none of us. So that's sort of what the ATP, they're forward thinking. They got their the forward thinking glasses going on. So, and again, we are committed to helping improve American tennis, because when GF Sports bought those events, part of the opportunity and part of the deal was we would keep the events in the United States and not sell them overseas. And Gary was very happy to do that because he believes in tennis. He owns and operates 7 clubs in New Jersey, the center court system. So his love of tennis goes back many, many years. And so when the idea of we can put another 500 in the United States, so all of the American players can come through and not have to travel. They can get, between us and Washington, they can play 2 500s, get the points, get the prize money. So it was really, a combination of things. But at the same time, we didn't know until, the nth hour about 18 months ago at the US Open is when it finally became official that we were going to get one. So it was bittersweet for Atlanta for us to leave. But I'll be honest, I think the fans really celebrated this year. And, we tried to make it a celebration of the event of the years. We're not leaving because it wasn't successful. We're not leaving because the fans didn't support us and the sponsors weren't there. We left for one reason, and that was because it was required to move up. And everybody says, well, why didn't you move that to, Atlanta? Why didn't you upgrade? That wasn't an option. It had to be in that time. And we happened to have an event in February that, again, was pure by chance. But that's how it came about. There's a lot of work.
Outdoor event in Atlanta in February, by the way. That would be a tough crapshoot.
No, I think even back in the day when it was in April, it was still a little bit of up and down, when it was the old AT&T Challenge back in the day.
At the Atlanta Athletic Club, I think it was, right up north there.
Athletic Club, yep.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's good or bad that I can remember those things. We all do. That's how old we are. But
I
yeah,
remember.
that's
I
okay.
remember watching Malavia Washington play there. So it was. That was my one of my first tournaments as a kid that my dad took me to. So
that was
fond memories.
big stuff. Big stuff. That was some fun times. You know what I mean? Peter, is tennis from your seat, tournament rev, attendance, etc. Is it increasing? You mentioned the commitment that the owners have, which is awesome, by the way. He's got a vested interest, and God bless him for that. We need more of that, right? Here in the States. Right. Is it getting better year over year? I know that at the end of the day, there's a business end of it. You got to make sure that's everybody looking at bottom line and year over year and year to date. And is it improving? Are the comprehensive nets at the end of those tournaments continuing? Is New York outperforming this one? I know this is a new one here. And without getting in the weeds with the specifics, is it getting better?
I believe so. If you look at almost all of the tournaments, their ticket sales have all gone up over the last 3 or 4 years. Again, everybody's adapting, creating more of those VIP opportunities in that, and making sure they get the correct players in there because all that player field. But look, the business is going up. TV is becoming a bigger factor globally, not so much necessarily in the US, but globally. Tennis is the number sort of 2, 3 sport in the world. So, there are a lot of positives, but I think just about all of the tournaments are seeing improvements, year over year. It does still come down to if you have your title sponsors and your sponsors, and you've got to keep creating a value proposition for them. But there are enough sponsors out there that are coming forward and supporting, and the sport itself can provide those opportunities. But overall, the tournaments, are improving. They're not improving, hugely necessarily, some better than others, but the trend is upward. So I feel good about our sport. I really do. And the changes that are happening, the thousands events going a little bit longer, so we have more days of that premium event, having another, 500, there's only 16 in the world, but having another one in the US helps that premium product in the United States and create that interest. And then on top of that, look, we've got a great crew of American women and a great crew of American men coming up right now. The Lerner team just beat Daniil Medvedev at the Australian Open in 5 sets. Now,
yeah, that was wild.
That's a huge win for him, obviously. And so he's a guy that he's a very young guy. He's only 18, I think. And so he's coming up. And then we've already got our other guys, Taylor Fritz, career high of number 4 in the world. And I was there in Torrey when he, got to the final. Fantastic. So as we have more star players in America and that, it's definitely helping our product and making it people are seeing it more. So I think overall the sport is in good shape. Yeah. We've got to always watch the pennies and the dimes, sure. No doubt about it. But I think tennis is in pretty good shape.
You mentioned, Torrey mentioned or asked earlier what sport is tennis kind of trying to emulate right now from the live experience. And it got me thinking about the ones that were mentioned, Indian Wells, Miami. And I think both of those benefit from their topography, right? They're both outdoor events. They both have these massive layouts, right? And I think the tournaments that I've been to, whether it be Miami or maybe not so much Wimbledon, but the U.S. Open for sure, they give this feel of you're at a tennis festival, very very much so like a music festival, right? Whereas a music festival, you can go see the bands perform, but also in between time, being there is a good time. So I'm curious as to like the challenges that you guys maybe have seen, where like Miami is outdoor, it's fun, the weather's great. But I've been to Turin, and I've been to the Paris Open, the Paris Masters. I was there this past year.
Okay, this year. Okay,
this year, yeah.
Is it,
this is their last year in Bercy.
Okay,
last year in Bercy, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm a tennis junkie. I'll watch tennis anywhere, but indoor tennis is not. It's not fun. It's not. It doesn't give you that festival feel, if you will. So how do you guys combat that? I know the Ford Center is a brand new facility, but how do you guys combat that that aspect of it?
Look, you've got to get a little lucky. Have a great match. That's number one. You've got to have more activation. So, like as I said earlier, our backwall, our digital backwall is 7 feet high. I think it's 2.5 meters. So it's a much higher. So we can create a show on the court. Like if you look at the Australian Open right now, their back wallers doing things and making it fun, making it interactive, doing things on the court. So we look at a sport like basketball. What happens on every time out? Something. Shoot out T-shirts into the crowd, whatever it is, cheerleaders come out, whatever, shoot a hoop or something. We've got to do more of that. And that's what we're doing in Dallas. We've done more of that. And we did that in Atlanta a lot too, is the last couple of years is really just doing those things so that people, when they sit in their seats and they see the ball kids run out with things in their hands. I know that seems so simple, but it creates more of a fun atmosphere. I'm going to get something for nothing. This is great. Now, even your VIP seats in the front row who, getting a free T-shirt really is not that big. They love doing it. Everybody loves something for nothing type thing.
100%.
And so it is for an indoor event. It is a little bit harder, but it comes more in the light show and that sort of stage idea. For us, even the concept of we were looking at doing theater style lighting for our court if we could, which is the only thing that's in the light is the court. We weren't able to do it this year. It's a very expensive and it's a time thing as well because we don't have the venue, for a month in advance, 2 months in advance to put all these things up. But that's how an indoor event does it. And I tell you what, if you want to go to an event, Alvin, go to Cincinnati. What they're doing in Cincinnati and what the new ownership group there from Ben Navarro and what Bob Moran is doing and the plans they've got. It's gonna be one you need to go and see. They're really doing some improvements.
That one eludes me just because of the time of year. It's like usually right around when my kids start school, so it's that's a tricky one. It's a tricky one for me. But
just sneak up there for a day. It's
I'm a big fan of I'm a go for a day kind of guy. I go to Miami for a day. I'm coming to your event for a day. I'm gonna sneak out to Charleston for a day. Australia, that was a week. But not.
You can't sneak to Australia for a day.
It takes 2.5 days to get there.
A quick trip is like 7 days. But like the one thing you did mention about being able to use the lights as a unique feature, I will say that was a positive of the Paris Masters event in that I got a chance to see Impeshi Pericard play and
you mean you got to see him surf?
I saw him surf. Francis, I always say he moves a lot better than you think for a 6'8" guy.
No, he does.
But between himself and I think Arthur Feast played the match before, in front of a French crowd, I was telling, I think my wife was next to me. I was like, I've never heard a tennis match this loud. It got really,
I love it,
really loud. So that is unique. You can't really do that unless you're maybe in Arthur Ashe or something like that. But I think that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah, you want to create your natural vibe in there. And when 2 years ago, when we were at SMU, John Isner was playing Wu Yibing in the final. And it was a third set tiebreaker. And I think we're at 7-all or 9-all or something. And everybody in the crowd just started stomping on the stands. It was like that So they weren't doing it for somebody. They were doing it for the whole sort of atmosphere. And I was standing next to someone and said, that sent shivers down my spine because that was people getting into our sport. And even though, look, John lived a mile away, not even a mile away from SMU and still does. But they were just enjoying the sport and the spectacle and that sort of stuff. And that's, as you say, you want to create those sorts of moments when it's loud. And again, I mentioned Eddie again. Eddie and I both like, hey, we should have more noise. We should have more fan interaction. You can't shoot a free throw without somebody yelling and screaming. Tennis, we have to be really quiet. I'm not saying we yell and scream, don't get me wrong, but we need to have a little bit. And again, as the rules makers are allowing a little more free movement during play. We actually, one of the things we did at SMU last year is we had food and beverage delivery to every box seat in the venue. During the matches, during the points, these guys were taught to stay low, keep underground, not disrupt play. And not one time in the entire event did we have the umpire say, oh, please stop. And everybody's getting food delivered to their seat. Yeah. It was, we had to tell the umpires and tell the players ahead of time, guys, if you see a little bit, don't panic. And players were great. They loved it. So it was all good.
It keeps butting the seats, what I mean?
Exactly. Because look, if you guys if you ever go to Madrid, Alvin, I was lucky enough to go there this last year, and Gerard does a terrific job there. And people complain about sometimes early on there's not a lot of people in the seats.
Right.
You wouldn't believe the VIP restaurant experience that's happening on the backside of it. I see why people are taking their time to get to the seats. It's like I think it's a 2-story, 17 restaurants that are spread out there. Your VIP package is great, and it's where everybody's hanging out, and it's really good, but they're not in the seats. So there's sort of this trade-off. They love doing it. They're a part of the event, but they're not in the seats maybe in the first round. Is that good or bad?
But the TV, the optics aren't so good.
Right.
Yeah, so it's always this, and you can't have that many seat fillers on site, like they do at the Academy Award shows or something like that on TV. But
well, you got a couple. You can fill it up with some junior academies if you can sneak those kids out of school for a little bit.
You absolutely can. Look, and I think you just actually mentioned something that I think that should happen more of. Coaches should take, they do all of these clinics, all this stuff. If there's a tournament around your part of the world, you should say, okay, I'm going to take my, $50 lesson that I get one time. I'm going to inspire these kids. I got into tennis from winning free tickets from a radio station around the corner. And I went up to the West Australian Open. Ray Ruffles played Ross Case, and Ray Ruffles used a green Yonex OPS racket. I thought it was the coolest thing. I love the sport. That's how I fell into it. So I think more academies in those places need to do these inspiring things with their kids. Take them to a tournament and look at the practice courts. Like for us in Dallas this year, when you're there, you're going to see all 4 practice courts. You can stand right behind them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And you can watch those, giant serves, watch those guys move. All of those things happen. We need to do more of that. And, everybody, give us free tickets. We'd love to come down. Well, it goes both ways. We'll give you a discount, give you a package on it, but inspire the kids. That's how you do it. I used to, back in the day when I was coaching, I'd take them to a college match. Kids love that. They all play college tennis. They go and watch the doubles, that short doubles, and boom, everybody's, this is awesome. Coach, we love it. After the doubles, we'd go get a sandwich, and by the time we got back, we're in the interesting part of the singles for the college match. But, we need to do the tennis coaches out there need to support the events and not always say, because I've heard it a lot of times over all the years, should give us tickets. Well, you guys could support the event too, and we'll always give you discounted, but do that for your players. It's what inspires them. I mean, you listen to Mike and Bob Bryan, and you listen to what Wayne used to do. It was all about taking to those things and getting a love of the sport and a love of those things. And look, you look at Mike and Bob now with their kids and that, they're continuing that. It's a fantastic story.
I'll pat Torrey Hawkins himself on the back because in times when I worked for him, he encouraged us to take kids to events. So I remember taking kids on 2 different occasions. The first one was down to Athens for the NCAAs when they were over at Dan McGill. And that was we just had a conversation with Bobby Reynolds, yesterday as it was. And we took some kids down to watch the national championship between Illinois and Vanderbilt. And I think that was probably 2004 or something like that. And it was amazing. And then also we would take kids over to the, I think when the Atlanta Open was up north in Alpharetta at the time.
Horseshoe Bend.
So it's important.
Back in the day. Now, I got a question for you. Did you actually watch the very last match of that Vanderbilt-Illinois match?
Oh, my God. Okay. So,
hang on, stop.
This is so good.
Wait. I coached the kid that played for Vanderbilt in the deciding match.
No, okay. So this is perfect. So I'm standing there. I'm right behind court 3, right? And Bobby was standing right next to me because he finished up on court 1 already.
Yep.
And so we got that straight line sight down to court 6, right? And so this is fantastic. This is one of the best tennis memories of my life. The look on Bobby's face when that call got overruled, I've never felt something for someone. In Torrey, I didn't bring it up with Bobby yesterday, but holy moly,
Next
man,
time.
that match set a fire underneath me. I had one of my players with me at the time as well, and it was amazing. I'm like, this is what college tennis is all about. And that player went on to play college tennis as well.
Could you see the call? Was it a good or should he have been overruled or not?
Oh yeah. It was in because this was when they were calling him myself. So he pulls the out call and then umpire with the quick overrule. Like nope. And that was a fun one.
Okay, so actually, his name is Lewis Smith, and I coached him as a junior. Great athlete, of course. Picked up tennis, been playing it, but was a starter for football both ways. Starting point guard at his high school team, got
geez.
tennis late, went to Vandy, terrific situation. And he now lives in Dallas. And he and I went out to lunch a few months ago. So it's great.
Fantastic.
I have to tell him.
That's
Well,
awesome.
don't point me out when I'm in town, though, if we're both on site
So
at the same time.
that guy said the ball was, he said it was in, man. I don't know.
That's a good time. In the time that you've kind of spent in a few different cities promoting professional tournaments, what would you, in your opinion, what makes or breaks a tournament from a standpoint of getting people to actually come out? Like, what are kind of the challenges or unique hurdles for Memphis versus Atlanta versus New York versus Dallas?
Oh, look, it's that's a great question because each community is a little bit different. Number one, you got to give them a good product. Like you go to New York, which has the US Open, it's got to be a good product and it's got to be good value for money there because they already have something. We came to SMU in Texas, and let me tell you, I always heard, and Torrey, I know you've heard it, Texas section really strong and that sort of stuff, and love their tennis. Because I'd never been there much, I didn't know. They love their tennis. The stories of the days of WCT tennis with Lamar Hunt, right, on the SMU campus at Moody Coliseum, the support that we had from day one because they wanted to see that level. There was a great challenger that happened at T-Bar M. They did a great job up
Dallas
there.
Challenger years ago.
Exactly.
Played it several times. I remember.
Exactly. It was
the
right
guy
before.
That owned the Stars. Didn't he run it back in those days, Peter? Or I could be.
Can't remember exactly those.
He was a big. I know he was a big promoter. If he wasn't the owner of it, I know he was a title sponsor.
They did a great job. So when you come there, the market loved tennis, and it's been growing ever since. And then we've got to continue to put out a good product of doing those things. And Atlanta, the same thing. Atlanta is a smart tennis crowd. So, we ended up creating the women's event that we started doing, and then bringing in Venus and Jeannie for year one and doing those things, and then adding in some VIP seating. So you've got to look at your crowd and sort of figure out what it is that you can do, and not try and be arrogant and say, this is how we do it. Okay, this is how we did it here. Well, we're up here now. We've got to do it a little bit differently. And I think those are the things in all those cities. But Texas has been terrific for us. They really have embraced it. And there hasn't been a person that, hasn't said great things about tennis, period, which is, always good for us. And Atlanta was the same. The Atlanta tennis people, as I said, very smart. So you couldn't pull the wool over their eyes and try and sell them something that wasn't good. The hardest thing for us as tournament promoters, though, is, we promote a player. And we did it this year in Atlanta. We promoted Venus, and Venus was coming, but she hurt her abdomen. Right. And, she was unable to make it. And she pulled out of some things she's having to do at the US Open as well. But that happens at the last second. And then the amount of times online, people say, oh, you guys, traded out. You promoted this and that didn't happen. And we never do. None of us ever do, because that's the last thing we want to do. When Riley Opelka came to our office, Eddie and I were in the office, and Riley comes in the time he had to pull out before he played his match, and his hip was bad. And as we now know, 2 years later, he's only just coming back. Right. He felt bad, but he has to pull out. And then the crowd's going, well, hang on, you had 6 guys on your poster, and only one of them actually, made it to the bell. And we're like, I promise you, they all wanted to be here. They're all trying to be here. And so that's the biggest thing. And all you have to do is a couple of years of, negative stuff like that, which is out of our control, and it can hurt the reputation of a tournament. But that's out of our control. But at the end, we know that if we keep trying to do it and do the right things, and, like when Nick Kyrgios couldn't play in Atlanta his last year that he came there, couldn't play singles. And he came out and he said sorry and all that sort of stuff, which is terrific because that's always hard for the players. But then he stayed and played doubles. And, of course, Atlanta doubles, him and Thanasi Kokkinakis winning Atlanta, what a great way. He stayed there, didn't leave early to go to the next event. Right. And that's when Thanasi lost to Andres Martin. And, so Thanasi just had a very, very tough loss to him. Nick wasn't playing. You would think they would say, if they didn't love tennis and want to be there, you would say, sorry, guys, we're going to the next tournament. But they stayed there the whole time, played the dubs. So, the players do, and you have to just keep creating that great product, number one, and keep trying to do different things with that product, whether it be adding the ladies, whether it be adding like we did this year, we did the Champions Challenge, having John and Andy and Mike and Bob in there.
Yeah.
And, they were all talking a little bit of, smack to each other and enjoyed that sort of competition because they're still, all the athletes are still very competitive all the time.
Yeah.
But you got to do something different. And that's what we have to do and find your market.
I was there the year that he played Andres. I was there the year I coached Andres for several years. I worked with Cole Bromley the year he played on Bear. That was a great match to watch him out there. He actually took him to a tiebreak in the first round, and then Bear finally got over jet lag and he shifted gears on him in the second set. But been there for a few matches. I was there at Eubanks, right at Eubanks year when he got the wild card.
He beat Taylor Fritz in Atlanta. I mean, that's his claim.
But the match, I want to say it was the second to last year that I took our club members to. There was a knockdown drag-out, 7-6 tiebreaker in the third with one defending champion, John Isner, and one Ben Shelton. And everybody is like, oh, who's this? And I'm like, guys, watch out for this kid. This kid's going to be pretty good. And they're like, what's his name again? And I'm like, you don't even know what you just watched. You know what I mean? I'm like, this kid's going to be good. This had to be 2 years ago. And I'm not sure if Ben got the wild card into that tournament.
22. He did get the wild card. NCAA champion. He got the wild card. And obviously the story with Brian being the Georgia Tech coach and winning the NCAAs, and he just won the NCAAs with his son. That was, Eddie did a great job and said, hang on, I think this would be good. We had a wild card. I said, yeah, that could be a great story. And John, let me tell you, I spoke to John, and I still speak to John all the time, here in Dallas, because he works with us on our Dallas Open. He's like, when he walked up, he said, I'm glad I got that win because I don't know if I get too many wins over that guy in the next little bit. Because
John was that close to collapsing. He was tired. It was a long match.
Oh, yeah.
And Ben was slinging it. I mean, as only Ben can. And I remember watching, I've known Brian since I was playing college. He had just got done. I'm not that much younger than Brian. I went to school a little late. So he and Kenny were starting in the early 90s when I transferred to Georgia State. He and Kenny were taking over as coaches, but after playing together and playing for Tech for years. And I remember talking to Brian after, I'm like, dude, your kid's like, he's pro ready. And he was, as Brian always does, very,
understated.
Very understated. Hey, thanks. Hey, appreciate he's working hard. I'm like, dude,
he's working hard
stuff. This kid's ready, and it wasn't just John because he's a tough matchup for John. I know the tennis part of it, but I was just looking at the level of his game and his points. I'm like, this kid, it's easy to go away. I've seen some players of mine that play top college ball. Cole's a good player. Andres is a good player. These guys, they played a good set of tennis. They're not pro ready. This kid was pro ready. And I was like staring down the barrel of that. I'm like, this kid's going to be all right. Sure enough, a year later, I got members telling me, "It's not the kid we saw." I'm like, yes, that I had to do a little write-up to help you understand what you were watching. You know what I mean? Anyway, it's some great things you mentioned, Peter. I'm going to take maybe a little different tangent. Are there too many tournaments, or are there not enough? And I want your take as a tournament promoter, tournament director, and in that, I want you to kind of speak to: is it just times of year that there's too many, and there's not enough? Could and is the tour a little too long? And I'm getting at just in a way of, and just short, an overall arching answer, not in the weeds, but I'm just wanting to know from a standpoint of, I've got this recurring theme. Alvin and I talk all the time, and and I know it's impossible. If there were a tennis commission, right, that ran the gamut of TV, and its whole goal is to maximize viewership, right? There's seasons. Most sports have seasons. I feel baseball's too long, right? I feel basketball, I really feel is almost too long with their 82 games. It's tennis with their, let's face it, it's starting at 40 plus weeks, right? For the actual season, maybe longer now with the Masters. That's where I'm headed with this.
Yeah, look, I don't think the difference on some of those sports, like you talked about, basketball, baseball, they're just in the US. Our sport is truly a global sport.
Sure.
So we chase the sun, basically.
Yes.
They're in Oz. It's hot in Australia. Yeah. They're not in the US over the December, or Europe. So our sport travels and follows the sun and stays outside mostly. Like Dallas is the only indoor event in the United States the entire year. So there have been too many events. When you start getting 3 250s on the same week and things like that, so that's what happened. That was one of the reasons they upgraded to the 500s, because they took some events off the calendar that way. And that I do think is a good thing, because what ends up happening, players get dinged up over the year and all that sort of stuff. So they're working towards and really working well with the players and working hard on that to create a calendar that works for all of them. The challenging part is at the end of the year when they're a little dinged up, but they're chasing those points to make it to Torrey. They're chasing the points for that, so they play a little extra. That back end is a lot of guys, but you also see guys pull out because they're hurt and things like that. So I think the season is okay. I really do. They've extended the thousands being longer, just means the guys have more days between matches. So, and again, look, one player says, "Oh, I like playing back to back," and the other goes, "I like having the days between." There's no perfect answer, but I think the sport itself is in a pretty good position. Total number of matches and that sort of stuff. I think the sport is okay. Where the challenge then comes up, though, of course, is all of the exhibitions. You've got your UTS that is happening during the year. Then you've got, the event that happened in Madison Square Garden, the event that happened, I think, in Charlotte, where Ben played and Carlos played, or it was Francis and Carlos, and it was Ben and Carlos at Madison Square Garden. Great events, fantastic for the fans, but when the players complain about a longer season, you sort of, as the promoters were like, they come, they say, "Well, Peter, I'm dinged up." I'm like, "Well, if you hadn't played that event, it's not as simple as that." And I'm not saying that, but so there's this balancing act. But look, the guys and the girls on the WTS, they got to make their money. So if somebody wants to pay them to come and play a great event, you can't say no. So it's a balance, and the good players, I shouldn't say the good players, the top players have to balance it. They, they're scheduled, they plug in the slams. Then they plug in the thousands that they have to play. And then they'll plug in their lead-ups to the slams so they're ready for them. And then they'll plug in the other events. But, if you're getting to the final every week, you can't play more than 20 events because, the length of them. So I don't think the season's too long. But to your point of when you asked if there's a commissioner, many years ago, I asked that question to Donald Young back in Memphis. And the funny thing is what Donald said, which I was not ready for his answer. He said, "I wish you used the same ball every week. That's what I would do. Uniform the ball." And the ATP, listening to the players and the problem, they're actually doing that now with their unifying swings of tennis. Like, for instance, this swing that we are a part of in this part of the year, it's going to be a Dunlop swing. And they've taken all the manufacturers and asked them for their input and things like that. And so the ATP has put together, and so we are using Dunlop balls. We always have, but now we will. And during the summer, I believe it's Wilson leading up to the US Open. So the players each week are using the same ball. And that's happening. And look, I'll tell you, hot off the presses, we have to now use an online system to do practice courts for the players. And so what's being done on that is, of course, player injuries, overwork, overuse type thing. So now there's going to be a database that's created of, okay, Torrey's on the court 2 hours a day, every single day for 20 weeks of the year. Torrey's doing too much. That's why he always breaks down in September. I'm making this up. Yeah. But they're really doing a good thing to help the players. And that'll give us data to find out, are they practicing too much? Is the season too long? So I think those things are happening. I don't think the season's too long. I think we're cutting it down to about the right. Previously, it had been too large and there were too many events fighting for the same players. But I think we're getting very close to a good mix because we truly are a global sport. And that's what people don't remember. That's why for us, COVID was out for us in our sport. These guys, I've got 14 different countries represented in my Dallas Open. Out of the 32 guys, there are 14 different countries represented. Well, when you couldn't travel around, our sport really was affected. We couldn't put you in a little room where nobody could be there. Yeah, the bubble was so hard. NBA. It was, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
no.
And you did mention a little bit about kind of two questions here. The swing that you guys are on right now. Does that take us from Dallas to Delray and continue to Indian Wells and down to Miami, or is it Am I reading that right?
It actually includes, Doha, Dubai, Acapulco, Rio. They're all going to be
Okay.
using Dunlop tennis balls. An entire, I don't know what do you call it, not really spring, winter swing, in that part of the world is going to be using the Dunlop balls for that. I mean, that's a big step because that's challenging for a ball manufacturer as well. Getting that many tennis balls out there and doing all that sort of stuff and that thing. But the ATP has done a good job of really working with the players to create that. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be better for the players. If we can eliminate reasons that they feel like they get hurt and they do get hurt, if we can eliminate those by simply being consistent with something and still maintain the value, for the tournaments, the economical value that they get from the ball providers, it's a good situation to be in. So, because look, we want these players to be playing for a long time. We want them healthy. We need them out there playing.
Helps everybody, doesn't it?
It does. It does. If we have a few barn burner matches at the Aussie Open, and those people get known, and then they come out and they play for a few more years. I mean, that's why I think probably we've been in an unbelievable generation with Roddick. Andy was the last great American player that won a slam, but when you had Roger and Rafa and Novak and those guys playing out there and Andy Murray, that's unbelievable. We've just been in such the greatest guys, the greatest tennis players, arguably, sort of the whole package in those four guys for a long period of time. And we've had the greats, as I mentioned, Andy was a great who, always, unfortunately, I think if Roger hadn't been around, Andy would have won a few more slams. And I think that, McEnroe and those guys and Connors and all of them were great, but they left the game so early. These last four guys have hung around a lot longer, truly because they love it. Andy Murray loves tennis. I mean, he had all the surgeries on his hips and he's still out there. You don't do that unless you love the game, and that's the beauty of it. And I think that's what, you mentioned Ben Shelton. It'll always be in the record because his first ever ATP event was the Atlanta Open.
There we go.
But he started playing competitively sort of relatively late. And so he loves the game. For him, everything's fun. And that's what creates great players along to a love of the game. And then we as the tournaments can help them with a correct length season and helping them out with the right kind of tennis balls and the right conditions to play in and make it as good as we can.
Yeah.
A bit of a nerdy tennis question here. You did mention the economic impact for tournaments, and I know that the Grand Slams kind of have their revenue breakdown is more so skewed towards like revenue coming from rights holders, somewhere in that 55 to 60% range, and then you kind of split out the other three categories from ticket sales and F&B and merch, and then probably sponsorships, I'm assuming, is the third. How do you guys tackle that beast when I know that your broadcast rights are handled a little bit differently than, let's say, your U.S. Open or Wimbledon?
Well, the U.S. Open, it's somewhat handled the same, but by different people. The U.S. Open, the Grand Slams are able to work on their own. I mean, they have their own broadcast rights. Like the U.S. Open has done an amazing deal, and they're actually taking production in-house, which is a huge. Gamble's not the right word, but they're controlling it 100% by doing that. For us, what the ATP does is we pull our rights to ATP Media. And so ATP Media goes out and sells all of the tournaments. And so, when you've got one person going out there and saying to, Sky Network or saying to Tennis Channel or saying to, whoever it is, guys, you can buy all of tennis, all of the tournaments, all of the matches. That's much, much better. And the broadcasters.
Piecemeal.
Exactly. Right. I mean, for me to go out back in the day, I was having to sell, my rights to the RSNs throughout the US before Tennis Channel really came on. I mean, that's a hard slog out there, and you weren't getting much money for it. I mean, they loved it, but one tournament standalone wasn't really good. What they can do now is they tell the story of the whole tennis season leading up, and in Europe, tennis is so huge. It's like number 2 or 3 sport behind basketball and soccer out there. So that's the way we do it now. And that helps us. All of the tournaments, once they got into the pooling, they all saw their rights go up. Some had some fantastic deals and maybe didn't go up as much, but by pooling our rights and having one person, which is ATP Media, sell it, it's been fantastic for us. And this is part of Andrea Gadenzi's plan is, to really make sure that we get that that broadcast and that aspect really as a group, because right now there are 7 different entities in tennis. There are the 4 slams, ATP, WTA, and ITF. And we don't all sell together. ATP sells together. The majors are so big that they sell on their own. And there's work to try and bring them all together. That's, as I said, all of the leaders are trying to get together to do it where they could, if we could somehow or other get all of that media aspect and brought together, and so that we're selling our sport to the world as one unit, so you always know where to find your sport, that would be, really beneficial. When you see all the graphs that we're showing, that's what we're trying to head towards. But that's a huge part for all of us, and that's the goal, is the broadcast and betting. As we all know, tennis is the second most bet sport in the world. There's a lot of money coming in from all of the sports, all of the tennis tournaments, because of betting. And as people can bet on who wins a first set,
How do we feel about that? How do we feel about that as tennis practitioners, right? I feel a little, anytime I hear about betting in tennis, I get a little uneasy, because it's such a personal game. It's the individuals out here.
Yeah, look, I don't look. People want a thrill of betting on something. I don't look. I think the integrity of our tennis players. I don't think twice that a player's throwing a match because of some betting or something going on like that. I don't think the integrity of the sport is bad. But look, everybody's betting on anything. And what color Powerade or Gatorade is going to be poured over the winning coach at the at the Super Bowl? They bet on that. I mean, really? And so look, if it's going to bring revenue to our sport, and then you can make your challenger level better and your 25,000 level tournaments better, because you're driving revenue in, so we can do more for the players. That's a positive. Yeah, exactly. I'm not, obviously we're not allowed to because of integrity or any of those sorts of things, and that. But I'd never say, if there's no fixing. You always just worry about the fixing of matches,
Sure.
but it's definitely not happening that I know of. At this level of tennis and that sort of stuff. So I don't mind it.
Fair enough. And we're getting pretty close to time, but there's a little segment we like to have here, and considering your coaching background, we like to call it Coach's Corner.
Okay.
Right. So we're gonna take off the tournament director hat here. We're gonna put on the old coach's hat. We had a very insightful conversation recently about some of the changes that we're starting to see, specifically on the men's tour, right? As your Zverevs and your Medvedevs and your Casper Ruuds are starting to get into their later 20s, they're starting to, what we feel like, is represent the, they're the youngest version of the old style of tennis, if you will. I'm going to say old as in like in the last, the relics of the 2010s, if you will.
Yep.
And what we're seeing now with, Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner and their ability to really turn our sport into a bit of we call it video game tennis, right? Over the last 4 years of, Alcaraz and Sinner being, very prominent in the sport, you're starting to see the wave of youngsters who were in juniors when these guys hit the scene. Now you're seeing them do their thing with the Yao Fonsecas and the Jakob Minsiks, and even, to a certain extent, Leonard Teen, right? What do you think is the underpinning of the way that these guys are choosing to attack this style of tennis?
I mean, its natural athleticism is improving. They are better athletes than they were 10 years ago. Now, I'm not saying hand-eye coordination and that sort of stuff, because that's not the same. But, these guys are, the average height now, I think, is probably about 6'4" or 6'5". That's a better athlete. They get about 20 more pounds on them. So as they're better athletes in any sport, they just hit it harder. They move faster, all of these things. So I think that's what's happening. That's why the game develops, on its own. Somebody comes out doing something a little different, and it's the athleticism that has changed so much. I mean, when you look at it, and look back in the day, Lendl was the first guy that did all the super training and became super fit. Well, and then everybody had to get fit. And then, I always look at this. This is a funny thing. Have you ever seen Novak or Roger or Rafa's off-court training videos anywhere of what they do?
No.
That's their secret sauce that makes them who they are. Roger did one thing one time, I think, where he was with his trainer, maybe a 45-minute video.
Yeah.
But look, they're all becoming better athletes, and that's where it is. And Pericard, who's serving that second serve of his, man, when you're averaging, 142, I think was his average second serve speed or something. That's just a guy that says, I'm this tall, and I know that I'm going to make 1 out of every 2 balls that I hit like this because biomechanically I'm better. And that's the other thing. Tennis was late to the idea of videoing and doing all that kind of analysis, and that's why now more of the shots are looking more similar. And golf, look, they all look the same almost now because they're just going to the correct biomechanics and those sorts of things. So I think it's the athletes have just changed the game, and the next wave of athletes, I don't know what they can do, but I'm always amazed. I didn't know you could swing that hard. I didn't know a guy of Sinner's height.
Faster, I guarantee you that.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, you look at Riley Opelka hit a on-the-run backhand down the line the other day in his match at the Aussie Open. I mean, Riley's 6'11", and he is moving like a cat. Back in my day, I'm 60, so that's a long days ago. Give me a 6'6" guy, 6'5" guy. He couldn't move. He was clumsy. Great, lob him all day because he couldn't move backwards. Yeah. Now they're cat-like. I mean, Ben's another example of that. I mean, Ben moves and does things, and the speed his arm is so lively. So, I think it's the athleticism that is, from me, that's changed and allows the guys to, they can hit more spin because they can swing that racket faster. So, yeah, the athleticism, that's the coach's aspect.
I'll take it. Torrey, anything you want to add to that?
I don't. I love hearing his take on it. He's Peter, you see a lot of the tennis at the top. I see obviously a lot more juniors, and I compared to the top, and 15, almost 20 years ago, I was at all the tournaments. You know what I mean? When right. With Sco and Jamie and obviously Bobby and a little bit with Brian. So with Bailey, so are now USTA president.
Absolutely,
all hail the chief. So
it's I've seen, and then over the years, obviously, you kept your toe in it, but not necessarily. You know what I mean? I think I've ran more tournaments than I have been to tournaments, in the last 10 years. But I think it's something that I love hearing his perspective. I was catching with Peter at the Atlanta Open this last summer and was just talking about things and just, kind of looking at it. So he's seen a lot of it. And I think his take is spot on. And I always like getting a different take, whether I agree or not. I love his answer,
that's right there. If we all agree, it's not good. And you see the special things of those players. The thing that they need to focus on, all of the great players, is they focus on the process and not the outcome. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. They're not out there to try and win the match. They're out there to improve their serve. Yeah. They're out there to improve their backhand. And if I do that, I win matches. That doing those little things, that's the other thing the great players, they're not talking about. When I was in the locker room, I took a player to Wimbledon a couple of years ago, and she qualified and won around there, so it was great. And just talking to her, it's all about the process, not worrying about, okay, can I beat this? No, let's hit 75% of first serves in. Let's hit more balls out wide. Focusing on that process is what is so important and what the great players really do. They're not looking to win a match in a sense. They improve on those little things. Like, Alvin, you and I are talking about Roger later on in his career came over his backhand more, and what's Novak looking for? He's won 24 Grand Slams.
Net less, and Novak's coming in more.
Coming in more, and he hires Andy Murray because he's looking for something more. Even at this stage of his career, he doesn't think he knows it all. He's like, how do I be a better athlete? How do I be, and I think probably more than anything, how do I be a smarter tennis player? Because that's the other thing about it. All of those guys in the top 30, top 50s, Torrey, they can all hit a target, but who can hit it at 4-all, 30-all in the fifth set? Yeah. That's the guy that has the confidence and has a process. I'm going to hit the target, not, it's 40-30. They're like, I'm hitting a target because I want to. And that's way easier said than done. Believe me when I say it. I'm acting like it's blasé. Much harder to do than say, but.
Well, fantastic. Well, Peter, we'll let you get out of here. Thanks so much for joining us. Torrey, always a pleasure. Peter, we will see you in Dallas. Hopefully everything goes smooth for you guys on the load in. And we'll call it a wrap there. See you guys soon.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Always